So now is an exciting moment we've been waiting for. We're having the keynote speaker, and we're going in a journey, something that has been always notified, that the design is being a challenge. We've been interacting with a lot of entrepreneurs, and they jump into idea to execution. And they miss this part, which is an important part, where today we will walk through this, through a very amazing experienced person, a person that had a chance for me to meet the first time, as I always was excited about what was design and how design was, and he was one of the first people who made me realize this part, which is amazingly important. And we would like to welcome Mr. Klyve with us on stage.
Thank you, Jassim. Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? Great, thank you. It is a huge pleasure to have been invited to speak to you today. I will be speaking in English. Apologies, I'm not so good at Arabic. Let's see if we can get some pictures up on screen. There you go. I believe we're going to be using the Slido today, so if you have any questions, I'm not sure of the number. Do we have the number? It's coming. It's coming. Good. Okay. Please do ask questions. I'm going to speak, and then we'll ask some questions at the end. But it's a tremendous pleasure to be here at the Gulf Institute of Science and Technology and talk about design. As Jassim said, and thank you for the invitation again from him, design is not always integrated into the activity of science technology as well as we might want it. So I really want to give you a practical conversation about what I think design is, how I've used it in my career, and how hopefully you can apply it to your activities and your creativity and all the work you do. So here we go. Great. So a little explanation about myself, first of all. I started life with an innovation and design consultancy that's mostly centered in California, called IDEO, though actually started in Britain, where I'm from London. I then started my own company called Tangerine, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And that was with a young designer called Jonathan Ive, who went on to enormous fame, way beyond me. I then kept with the Square logo and joined the Design Council, and then joined Orange, the mobile phone company. So I was applying my design experience to a lot of different companies, all with Square logos. Then I changed the logo shape and found the ellipse and worked for Samsung, a very, very exciting company, as you can imagine, set up their European design office. And then I worked for somebody that didn't really make anything tangible, but made the internet work. Cisco, an incredible technology company. And we'll talk a little bit about why design might have been applicable even to Cisco. And most recently, I worked for 5 years with Barclays Bank, a massive bank in the UK, and bringing design into banking, everyday life of people who are managing their money, developing apps, developing online platforms, was my life for 5 years. And most recently, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end, I've joined a UK startup, or rather scale-up, which is developing a very exciting digital identity platform. And we'll talk a bit about that before I finish. But the first question you might have is design. What is design? What is our preconception of design? Because most people might think of designers. So here is a famous European designer, Philippe Starck. He is like a magician who sprinkles magic dust on such products as an orange juicer, which looks very beautiful but doesn't work particularly well. And that is perhaps a preconception that design is just visual and not always functional. Well, I'm going to try and change that perception if I can. At the same time, if you Google design, you will get fashion. You will get Tom Ford. You will get Victoria Beckham. You will get Stella McCartney. Versace or many fashion brands. So fashion and design, very equated, which is interesting. And so clothing, a very important part of our culture, a part of our expression, is a design activity, of course. But you might also get my good friend Jonathan Ive, who, as I mentioned, I mustn't trip over this cable box. As I mentioned, I knew when he was a student, a very creative student, I have to say, already famous when he was a student. His work was being published. He joined my design company, and one day we were working for Apple, and he came back a couple of days later to announce that he was going to join them. And of course, the rest is the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the Apple Watch. He's gone on to create things of great style and function and digital capability that have transformed the world, I think. But maybe it was this guy who was the designer. Maybe his boss, Steve Jobs, with his vision and his ability to transform the world and enable Jonathan to create those great designs. Maybe he was the designer as well. So my definition of design is actually very broad indeed, and it encompasses science and technology and services and products and digital experiences. And it was formed from my first boss, a guy called Bill Moggeridge, who was one of the founders of IDEO. And he said something very interesting when I was a young man and joined his company. It was interestingly exactly 140 characters. So clearly when Twitter decided on that original length of a message, there must have been something in it. He probably wouldn't have said it so succinctly if he'd been doing it with more characters. But he said, few people think about it or are aware of it. I can read it here. But there is nothing made by human beings that does not involve a design decision somewhere. Now, I found that really quite profound because design is about decisions. We make decisions about everything. Here's a pen. You can't see it terribly well, I apologize. This pen has been designed to fit in my hand, of course, to be long enough for me to grip. It has been designed to have a cap. It has a mechanism. But the decisions around its design are not just its shape. They are the materials that it uses. They are the industrial processes that allow it to be manufactured in the billions, I imagine. Many billions of these pens exist. It also has decisions like a little metal clip so that it will fit in my pocket. So there's a whole complex number of decisions around a simple pen. And they are all, in their own way, design decisions, not just the shape. And from a designer's perspective, of course, unless all those decisions are made in the right way, you can't design that shape. You have to have all these decisions made before you can even decide it's going to have a round end. So I think people often think design is a very superficial thing, that somehow, excuse me, this is falling off. So let's look at what are the things I think are really critical about design, the real essential ingredients, the DNA of design. And as well as that design affecting everything statement, there are people. Design is about people. Here are some people. I like these people. These are people in Holland, in Europe, and they are older people. And I met them, and some of them, on a project with Cisco, I mentioned Cisco, who were working with the Dutch government to explore how technology could assist people get older, healthcare and social, community, paying their taxes, informing the local authorities. What were all the ways technology could help? And one thing I asked the local authority was, well, who are the people you're doing this for? And they did not know. They just said old. Now, when I Googled old people from Elmira, I realized there were lots of different types. There were people who were young and trendy, really. There was a guy up there on a dating site in his 70s, still really going for it. There are people who are protesting against changes in the environment. There are people using technology to play in a community centre. There are people who are struggling to carry their shopping home. And the guy in the middle is laughing. He's not dying, okay. He's having a good time. And this really transformed the attitudes of the local authority in this town. And they realized that understanding who the people they were designing for was really critical in developing services and getting the most out of the technology they were developing. So I think that's one of the most fundamental things about design, and we'll come back to it, that understanding about the people you're doing it for is really critical, and they are not all the same. Secondly, a good designer, in my book, has curiosity. So not only do we want to know the people, we want to know what they're doing and why. So here's an example that I like. This is London's Terminal 5, the airport, most recent airport in London. Obviously a big planning operation, needs to survive for maybe 40 or 50 years before a new one will be built. Need a sense of forecasting and foresight of how the world will be in 40 to 50 years. So one of those predictions for the future was that people will be older when they traveled. They'll be healthier, they'll be wealthier. So research was done to study older people in airports to see what we needed to do in the design of the airport. Now, the researchers found very quickly that old people were using the bathrooms a lot. Not surprising, not surprising. Oh, well, okay. Now, slightly strangely, one of the researchers followed the old people into the bathroom, and there they found them standing and listening to the announcements on the speaker system in the bathroom. Now, they were doing that because in the noisy airport, they couldn't hear when their flight was being called, and they were nervous about that. They were older. They weren't as confident as they used to be. So, in fact, by going into the bathroom, we made the discovery that we needed better signage, we needed quiet areas, we needed better audio systems and ways of informing everybody, actually, when their flight was going. Now, I think you could begin to see that if you go and find that kind of stuff out by digging a bit deeper, by being curious, then your design happens. You can see the problem you actually need to solve. So please have lots of bathrooms in airports, but also have good signage and good audio so that everybody can actually listen. So that curiosity really pays off. Well, my N has dropped. Innovation. So innovation, I think design and innovation are incredibly closely linked, of course. And there's sometimes confusion because design is seen as a very creative topic, and creativity is that generation of new ideas. It's what technologists do, it's what innovators do. They see things and they come up with new solutions, or they invent new technologies or new chemicals or whatever it might be. But innovation is that new exploitation of those ideas. So how do you turn that idea into reality? How do you bridge a great idea to actually make it a deliverable, valuable thing, both from a business point of view and to the customers you are developing your ideas for? So that's where design sits, I think. So creativity is in that. It's very important, but the role of design is often to visualize. Visualize is an important part of design. These are simple drawings I did at Barclays, and each one captures the essence of a new idea. The idea that we could onboard people using a picture of a passport. The idea that we could develop banking on voice-activated, internet-connected objects like Alexa and Echo and HomePod. The idea that we can use close-range beacon technology to notify when a particular customer has walked into the branch. So simple ideas, but visualize so that people go, I get it. I see what you're trying to do. So design has a role in actually taking your creativity, taking your idea, and showing how it might work. And immediately you begin to understand what you need to build. Here's another bit of creativity, something that takes us forward. So this is called a MOS table. It is MOS that creates a photovoltaic effect, enough potentially to power that lamp. Not yet, but soon. So you create a physical object and you put it in front of people and they go, oh, wow, we could do that? Well, soon, yes. So you bring things together, and we'll come back to some vision later on as well. It's a very important part of design, making people understand what it is you're going to do and what's possible. Now, technology is, of course, a really integral part of that. But technology doesn't always work in the way we want it to, or it raises other questions. So technology is amazing. It enables incredible futures. It celebrates what is possible right now. We could do this, we could do this, but it's not always in the way we want. So a good example, or a few examples, are the Segway, an amazing piece of gyroscopic technology you can stand on and go around. It was designed to replace walking. You know, you won't have to walk. Now, ironically, when they tested it in Boston, which is much colder than Kuwait, especially in the winter, it's extremely cold, the people who were delivering the post were given this, and they got very cold because they weren't exercising, so they didn't use them. You know, brilliant piece of technology, unused, and mostly used now in universities and golf courses, I think, or airports, actually. Very useful there. But not the mass transit that it was intended to be. Google Glasses, a fabulous invention, but when you see somebody with Google Glasses and you realize they're recording you, you're recording me? Stop. It becomes a problem. A new problem comes up. So Google Glasses, fantastic for surgery, fantastic for potentially gaming or police or security. Maybe not so good for just walking around chatting with your family. Not acceptable, in fact. And again, our friend Alexa and Echo, again, tremendous access, voice access, very clever technology. But increasingly, people are worried that they're being listened to. You know, many stories about suddenly having a reply in the middle of the night, or people receiving emails by accident. So people lose trust sometimes. So trust in technology can be dependent on how well we design it, because we're designing for people, and people have emotions. When I worked for Orange were very good at emotions, communicating emotion. So for a mobile phone, when it first had email on it, they talked about orange in the palm of your hand. It's a lovely image, you know, a very beautiful advert. Sadly, that was the thing that delivered it. It was ugly. It was difficult to use. The screen was tiny. You know, what needed to happen, actually, was what happened. That Apple and then Android systems and great manufacturers took on that capability and created the products we really needed. We needed to design and produce the technology of screen interaction to actually make that work. The previous one had all the technology, but it wasn't designed well enough to work. So I think that's very interesting. We can have amazing capability in technology, and it can fail because it hasn't been designed well. Now, here's an example that, again, at my Cisco career, a fantastic piece of technology could view you. You could use gestural hand gestures to flip through clothing, you know, huge numbers of clothing. And then you would choose it, and it would put it on you. You'd see you with the dress in the screen in front of you. But when we first saw it, it was almost impossible to use. We had to design it so that you wouldn't be firing everything off all the time. We had to build in delay so that you could be very, very secure when you pressed a button, or you're not pressing a button, you're just sort of doing that. So these things that weren't predicted by the technologists, but actually became very important to turn it into a practical, commercial product that existed in a shop in Oxford Street and allowed you to pick any item, to see it on you, and then go and get it. I believe some of those are around in the Middle East actually now as well. And it's not just about the shape of technology. It is, as that last example showed, about the interface. And this is an example where technology and data had created a fabulous outcome to help Barclays Bank detect attacks on their security, to detect criminal activity, incredible data reading. However, the output of the technology at the presentation was invisible. And we said, well, where is it? And they said, oh, well, every incident of crime or threat is an email. And there are about 16,000 emails a day. So despite that fantastic data, somebody has to read 16,000 emails to understand that the bank is being attacked. So clearly what was needed was design of the data to make it very, very tangible, so that anybody from an investigator to the CEO of Barclays could immediately understand that something was happening and that there was danger and make a decision. So, a very diverse range of design activities there, but I hope you can see what I think. Now, that's gone off the bottom of the page. Let's see. Design-driven innovation. So in summary, really, for this introduction, an approach that puts people's needs at the center of your approach. And it's a process that looks carefully at the way people do things to find out what they really want. And this is really important, as I hope I've explained, if we want technology to achieve its optimal impact in the world. And there are plenty of good examples where people have taken design and shown that it works in products and technology and services. And Airbnb, I'm sure you know of, I hope you know of. And these three guys are designers. Increasingly startups are being led by these guys are product designers from Rhode Island School of Design in the US, near New York. And it was their design curiosity that made them, oh, is that me? Excuse me. That made them work out what it was that people wanted. They went and found out what was going to work. They found out that people were very reluctant to rent their houses out. But when they turned up with a photographer to make their house look fantastic, then they were, oh, great, come in. I'm going to have a lovely photograph of my house. Now I'll rent it out to complete strangers. And it worked very successfully. In the fintech area, these are some examples from the UK. Companies like Revolut, companies like Monzo are completely revolutionizing our digital banking by really starting with what users want to do. Manage their money, see where they've paid it in a very graphical, simple way, visualizing it. And companies like TransferWise, and here's a small startup, Flux, that is getting rid of paper receipts, and now I'm delighted to say working with Barclays. So this approach to working out the next generation of services is really working. It's really happening. And I know very well that Barclays are extremely keen to compete with these starter companies who've come from nowhere who are doing it better and are resetting the benchmark because they're taking a design perspective. And it's not just making it look pretty. Now, on another type, completely opposite sort of scenario, you have something like Nespresso. With at one end you have Nescafe, instant coffee, just big barrels, very cheap. And then you have Nespresso, and Nespresso have managed to convert that coffee experience into an equivalent of 138 euros per kilo of coffee for coffee you make yourself. They don't even, it's not like they come out and serve it to you. It's a machine that just devours coffee. But we love it so much, we get the taste we want, we get the convenience of it, that it works, and it's become hugely successful. And the whole experience in retail, they have designed that whole experience from a coffee pod. And this is quite, apologies if this is a little bit academic, but I'm interested in this because at one level, the world is about whether you're undifferentiated or differentiated, and whether you're a commodity or whether you can charge a premium value. And I think design is integral to this, because at one level, you extract commodities, you mine for stuff, you take stuff out of the ground or whatever it is. But then you can make goods with that, and you can see that value going up. And then you can deliver services around those goods, or even services of which the goods are a touch point. And then you can stage that whole experience like an Apple store or an Nespresso store, or a high fashion store even. They become very similar. And in the end, you have individual and social transformation, as we've seen with Apple and Android, completely transforming the way we work. You would not leave your home without your phone now, whereas 10 years ago, you may have done. So that is quite a big transformation. And it's not just in the world of commerce, actually. Here's an example of the UK government. And it's one of many governments that are incorporating this kind of design thinking into government and public services, where we have big problems that are difficult to solve. So using this technique of thinking about people and being creative. So there's a policy lab inside the Cabinet Office, which is the core heart of government in the UK government. It's been going now for about 4 or 5 years, I think. And run by Andra Siodmok, somebody who worked for me when I was at the UK Design Council. She's gone on to take this design philosophy to such diverse topics as the future of shipping, pretty important for Britain post-Brexit, and the future of an aging population. How can we cope with people as they get older? And that's just a couple of examples. So where policymakers are incredibly bright people who are very expert, design thinking perhaps allows them to consider their citizens a bit more in their decisions and actually prototype what might happen and co-create, collaborate with citizens and people to actually help make better decisions for the government. Decisions that will be more likely to be adopted by people. They will actually take notice of them. And that's really the point. So let's have a look at the actual design methodology. How am I doing for time? There is a methodology under here that follows the kind of things I've been talking about. And it's been developed from the sort of mistake, if you like, of simply having an idea and trying to deliver it. I've worked many places where people say, oh, I've had an idea, let's just deliver it, it'll solve everything. You usually find out when a lot of money has been spent that perhaps it didn't work as well as we thought. Now, is there a way to find that out before you build something? And yes, there is. It's design. So when you look at design, there's a couple of things you need to do. You need to allow your ideas to fly free. And then when you've got your best ideas, you need to focus, focus, focus. So we call this process a diamond, or rather a double diamond. And the point about a double diamond, I hope this will come up here. Yeah. The point about double diamond is doing these two parts before you actually start building things. Because if you don't, you might be building the wrong thing. It's as simple as that. So discovery is all that element I was talking about, going into the bathrooms at airports, finding out what's really going on. There's lots of ways you can find out. Data, of course, in this digital age, we know a lot about what people do now and currently, and in the past, with functions, with activities, with apps, with behavior. So we need to bring all that together, but we also need to go and experience it as well. We need to go out and actually experience what's it like to find this app and use it, or find this experience and actually try it out. And that's a really important part of discovery, because a process chart does not reflect what an experience is, sadly. You have to go, as again my friend Bill Moggeridge said, you have to experience an experience to experience it. I think it's very true. And then you can go into design. And when you're designing, you have lots and lots of ideas, but you focus, focus, focus. You prototype, you try things out cheaply, early. And when you've got what you want, you've got your target journey, you've got your target vision. Now you can go and bring everybody in. You can bring the whole might of technology and development to work out how to do that and go agile and fast and deliver. But you know, you can be sure you're delivering the right thing, especially because you should. And the point of design is test it, be able to test it before you build it. So that's really quite a valuable thing. Oh, I think I went too quickly there. Let's just show some quick examples. In the discovery phase, you find out what's really going on. This is an onboarding process for a part of a bank, and every single red post-it is an unsurmountable barrier that nobody had particularly realized. But when you actually went through the process, it didn't work. So understanding that by making it very visual was critical. Then you can improve. This is a customer journey map for an international transfer. It's very, very complicated. What the customer does is at the top, and what the system and the process and the policies and the different parts of the organization are delivering that process. That's all the complexity that's behind it. And when you visualize that, it helps people realize where the problems are and what they can do to make it better. Going out and talking to customers is fundamental, as I keep saying, and just asking people what they are doing now, and of course then showing your new designs very early is really, really critical. And here you have some people actually going out, experiencing, doing what we call a service safari. So what is it really like to, I don't know, buy a mobile phone or go and change your energy company or whatever it might be? And from all that kind of information, we create personas. When we understand who people are, and that's often data-driven, here's an example of 7 different types of customer we found at Barclays as an affluent customer base, and they were all surprisingly different in age, surprisingly different in whether they worked for a company or were entrepreneurial, and surprisingly different in how much they liked or disliked the bank. So our most affluent customer disliked the bank the most. So that's pretty important to know that, because now we can focus on that customer and make sure they are really happy and not uncomfortable with us. But nobody knew that before until we had found those little personas and those different types of customers. So it was very important for us. Now, the customer experience, the customer journey, is an interesting thing. What is a customer journey? So here's an example, my definition. This is a page in Amazon. It's a book I wrote quite a long time ago, which is why it's only £1.47, secondhand, 15 years ago or something. But in that book, it's on a website that can tell you lots, it's very easy to buy on Amazon and Alibaba and all these other types of platforms, beautifully designed. Well, not beautiful, but very functionally designed. One-click payment, and you can see other books that might be similar, and in the case of Amazon, you can go into the book and you can find out what's in the first 15 pages. You can see how old it is from how old the Mac is. And then, of course, an amazing robot factory will go and find that book and take the package off and deliver it to an amazing logistics system that you can track on your mobile. Oh, my book's coming, that's fantastic, good. And then a delivery person will turn up. Now in Britain, the delivery person turns up to my house to find this, my front door letterbox, which was designed for a Victorian age 100 years ago when things were just letters, not Amazon parcels. And so my customer experience, and here's me queuing on a Saturday morning at Wimbledon post office where I live in London, and at Christmas the queue is half a mile long. So, each bit of that journey is absolutely fabulous. Amazon are fantastic. DHL, UPS, every other brand's fantastic. The technology is working beautifully well, but at the end of this process, I'm still queuing at the post office in the rain. Who's responsible for that? Is one person responsible for that? No. And that's the tricky thing. So now we're going to have drones bringing my book down through my chimney or into my garden. We're trying to find solutions to that at a large scale. But it just as an example of what the real journey is still very broken, despite utterly brilliant bits along the way. So I always define a customer journey in a few stages that seem to work for just about everything. And whatever you're designing or creating, developing, I think you need to think about, how do people even know what you are making exists? Obviously that's marketing perhaps, but does it satisfy the real need? How do they join it, buy it, subscribe to it? What's it like when they use it for the first time? How do they use it more and more so they become loyal customers? And how do they stay with you and become advocates and go onto WhatsApp and say, wow, this is the most amazing product or technology I've ever used? I think if you think about that, we all spend our time thinking perhaps about the using or the function of it, forgetting that from a customer point of view, it's much a broader experience. So my credo is, my summary of that is, we have to remember what is the problem or customer need we're actually trying to solve. No matter how brilliant idea, is it solving a problem? Who are the people who have the problem? or the opportunity we want to give them the desire to buy this? What does the go-to, what is the best journey we could imagine look like? What should it look like? Not just be an accident, but actually be designed to be good. And I think you'll see in the best companies in the world, they take that very seriously in everything they do. So a little bit more on the idea side. Here's some ideas. This is something we use with anybody, not just designers. It's called a Crazy 8. You're given a piece of paper and you fold it into 8 sections, and you draw in each section one idea in a minute, 1 minute, and it has to be drawn. And then another minute and another for 8 minutes, and people are terrified at doing this. But it's one of the most fun things you can do, and you'll be surprised how many ideas you'll have. And then you all vote on them. So this was an 8-minute session with about 5 people, so you instantly have 40 ideas. Wow, 40 ideas. That's amazing. Some of them might not be so great. Some of them might be versions of the other one. And then you vote. But it's almost impossible not to have great creativity come out of this. And there's lots of techniques like this that help us all become very creative. And turning an idea into reality can be as simple as drawing it with a Sharpie. And an explanation of the service. And over here, hopefully it's not too difficult to see, somebody has just got bits of paper and they're pretending it's a user interface on an app. So when an alert comes up or an answer comes up, they just move a bit of paper in. And you can imagine what that app is like. You know, no digital technology required. We can design it, actually. And then you can prototype. So we write it down, what we actually want it to be, and we bring in great digital designers to prototype that. So now we can start showing it to people, show it to ourselves and our future customers to say, is this what you want? And listen to them and do it again till we get it right. And this is very low cost, but it de-risks your product development enormously because you know people want it. And then we user test, of course. User testing is a critical part of digital development because you find out whether people understand that button, whether they understand what's going to happen on the next page. And it helps you. Even the best designer in the world never gets it right. It's tough being a designer because almost everything you do, you show it to people and it's wrong. But that's the learning you have to go through. And user testing helps you see that. We test ideas in Barclays often by just going out into a cafe and saying, well, buy you a coffee, tell us what you think. And that works a lot. And here's some feedback. You know, the red is kind of not so sure and the green is really positive. It allows us to go and make that product better and better quickly before we go and develop it. And we find ourselves telling stories. Sometimes I think that all I really do as a designer is tell stories. And actually these were stories from this region where we were looking at a journalist, a textile manufacturer and a fishing cooperative for a big multinational project to look at how technology could help them do their education better, help them trade better, help them improve the value of their fishing intake, catch. So stories convert all that creativity and ideas into things that we can understand, things we then know we have to do. And that's an incredibly important part, I think, of design. So very nearly at the end, vision is very important. How can we imagine at the end of design, you know, what the future will be? Now, last night I came out here and saw some really fantastic examples, and I've just picked a couple of them. I mean, who had ever thought, on the left here, if you're wondering what that is, it's a robot cat, okay? It's a robot cat with, at the back, a food tray, a food container, but the cats apparently are quite large here in Kuwait, and they need to be fitter. So this robot cat runs off around the house, and the cat has to chase the food. And therefore, Kitty is fitter and leaner before they get to the food, and then the sensor says, okay, you've got it now, your reward is you can have your food. What a brilliant idea. Creativity, it's been made visible, tangible in front of our eyes by this model, this prototype. On the other side there is a duck that alerts you if the water in a bath is too cold or too hot, most importantly, mostly about heat, for your child, just as appropriate to an old person as well, of course. So what a simple, brilliant idea, brought together in a way that I can show you, and you go, wow. That, for me, is very much the essence of design in my definition, bringing the possible and the imaginary, the creativity together. Here's another. I hope you enjoyed those ideas. I really enjoyed last night. It was fantastic to see young people doing that here in Kuwait. It was great. And really making it as a product of the Makeathon. Here's another slightly different example of something similar. This is a washing machine. Okay? Keep with me. It's a washing machine where you put your clothes into the buckets which hold water. And the plants you see on the top filter the water. And so after 1 week, you have clean clothes. Okay? So everyone laughs. Yes, of course. Now, the same company that did this did research into what's the average time between, this might be a European thing, so apologies, but between dropping your clothes off at the end of the day when you get undressed and getting them out of the washing machine. The average time is 1 week. They sit in the laundry basket for 6 days, of course, not getting cleaned. And then you wash them on the 7th. So actually, this isn't quite as stupid as you think. And it makes you think, well, there's no power, there's no detergent, this is incredibly environmentally friendly. It's also completely fake. It's a model with some fake glass on. But it makes you think. It puts you in a different context. And for me, this is as close as you can get to having a crystal ball to understand the future. You can model something and tell people how the future might be. And you can talk to them about that. And they can say, well, will my clothes smell? So you think, okay, well, we better make sure they don't. Or maybe we have to change culture to accept that. I don't know. But this allows you to make some pretty important decisions about the future by modeling something that looks so real you can engage with it. Now, I think that's a fabulous thing design does. It tells a visual story to make you understand how to design the future. So right at the end here, I'm going to talk very briefly about how I'm using vision to help in my new company, Object Tech. Object Tech are a UK design company, and this is the view from my office, actually. Incredible view across Tower Bridge in London, right next to London Bridge. And Object Tech are developing digital identity, self-sovereign identity, which will allow us to be recognized as ourselves through biometrics without anyone else having that data. So you will be able to say, this is me, I am me. And the first application of this is actually near here in Dubai. We will be part of the 2020 airport development. And what it will mean is that you will come off the plane when you arrive in Dubai and just walk through passport control. There will be cameras, of course, and they will see that the blockchain identity you have is you and absolutely 100% you, and that will be exchanged and you will walk through. And that's going to be very exciting. It's going to allow a lot of other things. Now, I've got a very quick video, but it's in response to our identity at the moment through our digital devices is being kept by, these are some European examples, but obviously Facebook and Google, you know well, and Twitter, Equifax, a financial credit company, Experian, the same, NHS, the National Health Service of Britain, have a lot of data on your health, and people are very resistant to sharing that data, which could be for our benefit. And British Airways, last couple of weeks, lost 15 million account details, as have many other companies. So data is not particularly safe. People worry about this. So we're trying to change that relationship so the data is yours and not there to be stolen. So I've got a film. The sad thing is that there's no sound on it, except it is on my computer. So I'm just going to quickly talk you through. But obviously you can see this first application is about airports and about your ability to arrive and cross international borders. And here you see exactly what will happen as you leave that airport. Your digital passport is verified, and you are through. You are notified you're through. So a small mobile phone message will then tell her that a chauffeur's arrived. And again, the identity can be matched, so you know your chauffeur is the person you think they are. And off you go, traveling to your destination. ID confirmed, so we know this is the right person who's picking you up. At your destination, you are paying completely. It's all done, it's automated, because they know it's you, and it's linked to your payment account. As you enter your hotel, then you're automatically recognized by the concierge. All your details are there. You are seamlessly taken through to your room, and they know it's you. You might spot some of these pictures are from Dubai. And then you want to go shopping, so suddenly you go into your favorite store, your store recognizes you, realizes you're a loyal customer, and can give you that discount that they're going to give you for your loyal customer. And then you want to go to your club or your membership area, and again, you're recognized, your services are personalized to you, and you get extra benefits because you're traveling to a different part of the world, perhaps. And then you're back to your health. This poor girl is not feeling so good. She needs to go and get some help, but she can be sure that her records are safe and she can share them on her terms with the doctor, and they won't be shared anywhere else. So personalized services, identity verification, and identity reimagined is our mission. Sorry? Well, it's scary if the data is shared in other places. The point is that your data is kept with you and people can't access it. Now, that takes a lot more explaining around the incredible encryption that we have to do. But the point is that these organizations don't have it. They just have the proof it's you, the blockchain hash mark that says, yep, it's this person, we can validate that. And it's mostly around passports and validated documents. So one of the benefits of this is a single sign-on for life. Once you get into this system, you should be able to go anywhere, never fill out another form. That's our ambition. So finally, a couple of quotes. Design our ideas to succeed. Consider the people you are creating for and what is the problem you are trying to solve. And create visions of what brilliant looks like. Now, who said that? Oh yeah, I said that. And I hope I've said it all the way through this speech. But finally, my good and much more famous friend, I think, reminds us that we also have to be radical in our thinking about how things could be and make the world a better thing. So Johnny Ive, I spent a lot of time with him. One of the things he says, and he talks about Steve Jobs had said as well, was that you need to be a realist. You want the world to work in the way we want, but to do that, you need to demand the impossible. Steve Jobs demanded the impossible. We all need to say, this is how it should be. Now let's go to work with the amazing technology, the amazing creativity we have to make the impossible possible. So thanks very much for your time. I hope that's been enjoyable for you. Thank you. Oh, and I don't know whether there are any questions. I haven't looked at the questions yet. Yes. I beg your pardon. Do you want to pick some?
It's your choice.
Okay. I like the first one. Why most logos are basic and they call them creative logos? Well, I suppose sometimes simple design is the most difficult. So sometimes it's very easy to complicate. So I might say that don't be fooled by simplicity. Sometimes that takes a lot of craft and care. What happens if my digital ID was lost? Well, that isn't technically possible, though what is because of the data, the way it's being collected, you can access it via a variety of ways, and it's held in what we call a digital locker. What is perhaps more interesting is a lot of people don't have identity in the first place. People in refugee situations, obviously a lot of terrible instances around the world mean that people have lost their identity data. So one of the things we are building is a way of validating people's data through their communities, through other ways. So you can build up your identity, and when perhaps you arrive in a different country, your identity can be established and your biometrics can be recorded so that you then have the right to identity and you can use that anywhere else. But it is yours. It is not copied anywhere else. It is your individual blockchain marked identity, which biometrics are constantly validating. It's a complex thing. I'll come back next year and explain it more. Do you think that AI will cause the death of cash that will affect harshly on the economy? So this is a big conversation. I meant to mention artificial intelligence. It's another one of those technologies that has amazing capability. But again, we have to think about what is the problem we're solving with it. What is it really doing? I think we're beginning to see the value of it now. Will it cause the death of cash? Well, you saw some examples in my film of how merely walking into a physical store will immediately recognize you and you can immediately walk out. And we've all seen the videos of Amazon Go in Seattle as well, where that is a reality now. With AI, for me, the value of AI is in constantly validating your identity, actually, confirming that you are you. But will it be the death of cash? We can see, we were talking last night, there are still occasions where cash is required. But it's a philosophical debate, isn't it? If we remove cash, will that prevent a lot of bad behavior, but at the expense of perfectly normal behavior? I'm going to leave that for others to discuss, if you don't mind. Are there any more questions, or is that where we've got?
Yeah, we have. That's all.
Oh, is there a methodology that you can name for us that we can read? Well, I would really recommend the UK Design Council, where you'll find that double diamond. It's a very good explanation of the design process that you can follow. There are quite a few books on the design process. Tim Brown's book on, he's the head of IDEO, is a very good introduction to design thinking and how it's been very beneficial. But if you look for Double Diamond, design process. You will see a lot of information on the internet about that. And that hopefully will be very helpful in a practical way for what you do. And if anybody wants to email me or be in contact with me, I'll be glad to help them afterwards. Okay?
The last statement, I think.
Make your ideas simple but significant. I completely agree. Thank you for that.
And thank you for an amazing presentation. We would like Mr. Ahmed to join me on stage to اللجنة المنظمة.
And thank you all for coming out. I appreciate the audience. Thank you. Thank you. Great pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, sure. On the cross here. That's handy.
So we designed a spot for you.
Actually, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's fantastic. Great. Thank you. Good. Thank you.